Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well in your current circumstances and that you have great plans for improvement. I'm Lydia Ruth, and I am so happy to be here to be speaking to you. I have put it off far too long, and I intended to come a lot sooner, but then the sun started to shine, and I thought I should go for a walk. And then, as I was walking, I thought of some other things to do, and so I didn't get back here, but I hope that it was worth the wait, and I may stay on a little longer just to make up for it. Now, to those of you who think it should be shorter, and I have looked at my stats to see that most people will watch a few minutes, like an average of 20 minutes, and then leave. But that doesn't matter because you can always shut it off and pick up where you left off the next time you need something to listen to. And it's designed to listen while you work at home. It's a homemaker support. And so if you want to know more about it, just go onto the playlist and you can listen to the previous broadcasts and find out more about it. We start out as homemakers getting ready, and I thought that it was brilliant. Some lady had done a broadcast or a video about how to present yourself for women, on how to present yourself in public so that you looked presentable and didn't detract or distract or create too much of attention to yourself by dressing too poorly or not covered well enough. And she suggested to use the your appearance in public as your quote runway. And I thought about that a little bit, and I wondered how that would work for the home. For those of you who love to sew, who like to try out a new pattern and wear it and just at home, to turn your home into your runway and to walk elegantly through your home in the clothes of your choice, the clothes that you like. And most of us would rather just be home, not have people looking at us, but I just thought it was brilliant to think of the public as somebody who needs to be respected enough to dress for them, and it's the same for the home. I believe that the home, the shelter, deserves that respect because it's the place where you go to get away from stress. And if you bring stress into the home by not caring for yourself, by not caring for your body, and it shows that you don't have a regard for other people and also for yourself. If anything, dress for yourself and for God. And so we always start out with these things, and I gave you things that you could do in 5 minutes to get you going at home. And everybody has their own ideas, and remember, these are just based on my own experiences and observations. You'll be different, you'll work things a little differently in your home. So the first thing I would suggest upon waking is I like to have a little tea set in my room or a little refreshment station with things everybody needs, coffee, tea, whatever, and all the things, so that we don't have to jump up and run to the kitchen, and I can still kind of lounge around for just a few minutes and write my list. And then after my list, I like to have a sincere prayer that God would help me to glorify Him in what I'm doing with that list and my homemaking and the other things that I need to do. And I would suggest you do that too. And then preparation. That means, ladies, you have to bathe. You have to smell good. It's like having a clean canvas. You have to dress well with freshly ironed clothes if you possibly can. I keep an iron board out all the time in one of the rooms so that I can do touch-up pressing. Clothes hanging in the closet or in drawers don't always keep the wrinkles out. So I think it's good to have clothes that feel fresh and crisp. That's one of the reasons I love line drying, even in the house. And so, of course, you bathe, you dress, and you dress your best. It's no use saving some of that stuff in your closet for something better or for company, because by the time you use it, it'll be out of fashion anyway. So just wear what you have at home, and you can always wear an apron over it. One of those bib aprons that come up to here and cover everything. And I'm getting to where I can't do anything in the home. I can't work without, I can't even write a letter unless I've got an apron on. It comes down to that. And because it's so motivating. And get your hair and your face and your teeth done and everything so that you are presentable to yourself, at least have some dignity. You've probably read stories of, if you're of a vital age, we used to read stories of people who became in some way isolated or detached from their society, and how they managed and how they kept their mind about them. And they would have decided to put themselves on a routine, get dressed up, and just act like it was a working day and get a lot of things done. Also, I think it's really important to have journaling. Journaling is just little notes here and there and sticking things in a little book just to give some kind of dignity to the day, to show that you have done something, to show yourself. And it's also great for memory, because I can look back in my little book and see when I last bought something or changed something or went to the grocery store or repaired something, how long I've had something. And so these little journals can be quite useful. And wouldn't you have loved to have had one of your great-great-grandmother, to see, what she bought and what she made and what she ate and where she went. And so I'd like to start out with making sure that you are ready for the day. And if that's all you get done, and maybe something waylays you after that, at least you'll be dressed for it. And you do have to consider other people, because if you want to give your lifestyle, homemaking, homeschooling, whatever it is that you believe in, a good report, you do have to have a good presentation. You do have to look good as well as you can, because you will have people coming to the door. And I guarantee you, it's like they call it Murphy's Law, the day you decide you're not going to bother is the day everybody comes. And the day you decide you're not going to clean up something, that's the day everyone's over there. So if your home is important to you, and you can make it important. You might not like it there, but you can make it a place you'd like it to be. And that is what a lot of people have discovered, is that they can make it as comfortable and luxurious as they possibly would want if they went somewhere else. I'm getting to where I don't want to go anywhere else, because I've made it so comfortable that I don't really want to go stay in a hotel or eat out, because during the last couple of winters I took several online courses in food preparation, different kinds of cooking, and learned that I can make it taste better at home and maybe be more healthful. Now, to start out with, I usually have a cup of tea, but I have been ordering these little sample packets, and they're only $3 and something cents. And these kind are called full leaf tea, and their full leaf teas are made in Oregon. And so I ordered some of these, just the sample, because I don't want too much, and I also didn't know if I would like them or not. And then there's another company called the Whistling Kettle. So I ordered some of their little sample teas, and I wanted to show you something that I got. I believe I got that at Walmart, and it comes in a package of 2. And what it is, it's for coffee. But what I discovered was, I've got some of the tea leaves in here with loose tea. It has a much finer mesh, and it's on a package that's over there by the tea and coffee, on the tea and coffee aisle at Walmart. And it has a much finer mesh, and so those little bitty bits of loose tea don't fall into your cup. So I use this, I just use it straight in the cup, but you can use it in a teapot, and I like it so much better than the little tea strainers. And so I put it in here, and I wanted to read to you the interesting names of these teas. This one is called organic migraine relief. And the ingredients are cinnamon, ginger, peppermint, feverfew, catnip, ginkgo, lavender. Yes, and also I want to caution you when making these tisanes or herbal teas, do give it a light touch. You don't need to make it look black like coffee. Tea is delicate. Just treat it very lightly. You don't need to have a lot of color in it. A lot of people will just let a tea bag sit inside of a cup, strawberry or raspberry or something like that, and then it'll get really bitter and strong and just be awful, and then they won't like it. Just give it a light touch. You ought to be able to see through the tea that's organic. It's not like coffee. So then the other one from Full Leaf Tea Company in Oregon is Organic Healthy Vision Tea. Don't we all wish we could see without glasses? Let me see. So this has green tea, anise seed, bilberry leaf, fennel, turmeric. Yes. And then the other one that I got from them is called Organic Pink Grapefruit Tea. That was very nice. And it has white tea, hibiscus, grapefruit, and it's all organic. Then from the Whistling Kettle, this is interesting. I was kind of amused by it. Oh, this is purple whole leaf tea from the country of Kenya, and I haven't tried it yet. And I'm not sure what plant that is. I guess it's a purple plant. I'm going to try that. And then the next one is Sharp Mind. When you're vital, you really care about things like that. Sharp Mind, and it has blackberry leaves, apple, mango, banana, tangerine, purple tea. That would be this, like this one I showed you. I haven't even opened that one. Pomegranate, raspberries, strawberries, marigold, cornflower blossom. That's interesting. Everybody needs that. And it's from Whistling Kettle. It's called Sharp Mind. And the little samples don't cost very much. And then this one is called Angel's Dream. Let's see. It's green tea, mallow petals. I have marshmallow herbal plant outside. That's what they make these things out of. It's not the same as marshmallow, and cornflower petals. And then the last one was, and this was actually really tasty, almond panna cotta. It's panna cotta, not sure what that is, toasted almond slices, grated lemon zest, lemon juice, yogurt and lemon granules, lemon peel, Yellow Mountain Everlasting. Very interesting, isn't it? And that sums up what I had collected over the last few months during the winter. It made life more interesting for me, because if something like that came in the mail, I'd say, good, I'll put that on my list today. I'm trying a new tea. And I do it for myself. Not everybody will be interested in the same thing. I think that's really important as a woman at home, not to push things on the other family members if they're not interested. And so I have a lot of things to discuss with you today, because I've been quite busy and discussing with a friend of the elegant lady's way of getting out of a tight spot, turning down invitations if you don't want to do something, or getting away from a conversation that's inappropriate or embarrassing, or just people who have thrown propriety at naught or something like that. And we've been discussing a lot of that, so I will have some of these hints that we've been discussing. We like to solve problems, and one of the words that we studied in Ladies' Bible class was the word edify, and it meant build up. So when you built up someone in your conversation, we weren't supposed to, the Bible says not to talk about things that are corrupt, but to edify. Anything that edifies means to build up, and also it means the improvement of the mind. And That's really a nice old-fashioned phrase, isn't it? Because didn't Mr. Darcy talk about that when he mentioned Elizabeth, on how he admired her because she improved her mind by the reading of books, good books? And so if it's not something that improves the mind, we have to be very cautious about what we say. And one of the things that I did was kind of laid out for the ladies that come that we had to be careful what we talked about. Now, women are particularly bad when they get together talking about things that they ought not to talk about that are embarrassing to other women. So I just discussed it all. I said no bathroom talk, and I described what we could not say. And also, because we've got young women coming, and some of them have said that a lot of the classes they go to, they're supposed to be Bible classes. Eventually, after the study and everything, everybody gets to talking and their tongues get loose and they start talking inappropriately. And so I said we don't want to talk about tragic things that, and also too much, it's sad, but really we can't talk too much about surgeries, in great detail, because if you're sitting around drinking tea and you're eating, there used to be a rule when I was growing up, is not at the table. Or we don't talk about things like that while we're eating, not while we're eating. And because it would ruin people's appetite, even if you spoke sharply to someone at the table during a dinner was always, and mealtimes were always supposed to be pleasant. If you spoke rudely to people, they didn't want to eat. It would just totally turn their bodies cold. They just would not, even a child didn't want to eat, because it was so, the social association, it broke a bond kind of, and it's just the weirdest thing. Some people today still don't like to eat around other people because of bad conversation at the table. So, because it just gives you a bitter taste, as they used to say, a bitter taste in your mouth, or sour taste in your mouth, which is a figure of speech, meaning the association and the memory was so bad that people didn't want to sit around and eat with other people because of the kind of talk that went on. And we could not talk about things that were crude or guttural or greatly descriptive of bodily functions of any kind, women's problems, childbirth details, things like that. Even though people will say, oh, but God made those things and they're all good, it doesn't mean that we are obligated to discuss the details because it's private. Many things are private. You don't have to talk in public about things that are private. And we discussed 3 or 4 items that we would be very careful not to discuss. Now, of course, if you're with one person, you're just one-on-one. We also didn't want to talk about deviant things, especially what the world is pushing on everybody. Deviant things, sinful things. And also not to come and complain about members of our families, because, of course, if you're having problems with someone in the home, we want that person to feel free to come back and not think that their reputation has been ruined, even though they've probably done a lot of it themselves. At least to give them room to grow, and also not to talk about anything that isn't lovely or pure or good or true. And one of the things that came up was that, okay, Philippians 4:8, whatever's true, lovely, pure, think on these things. Of course, we want to make our speech lovely, true, and good also. But one of the things that came up is that people will stop at truth, and they'll say, well, it's true. This is true. Therefore, I can talk about it. But according to this scripture, Philippians 4:8, it has to be true and lovely. And so something might be true, but if it's not lovely and it's not palatable for the young people around you or other people who are sensitive to certain kinds of talk, then we want to be sure that our talk is edifying, meaning building up and also improving of the mind. And we don't want to stay down there talking about things that are of a bodily function, digestion and elimination and things like that, and also any kind of tragedy type of thing. And that did not mean that we're trying to hide anything. It just, because the information is out there everywhere you go, and you've got your little phone and you've got news on it, and you can hear all that deviant stuff, all that you want. But we wanted to have an hour away from the world. Let's just have an hour away from the world. We'll take turns reading the verses in the Bible that we have designated for that day, and we will try to discuss them only and sift out some truth. And we will sing, and we will pray, and we will have our tea, and we will block out the world's influence just for that hour, because we need that intermission from stress. And so I did lay down some rules. Now, anybody can twist the Word of God, and they will say that, yes, whatever's true, whatever's lovely, whatever good, well, to me, this is good. And somehow twist it, but we have to be very careful. And as we become more withdrawn as homemakers, when we find out how much there is to do and how much time we have to spend at home, we see society less and less. And as we become more withdrawn from the sordid and the tawdry and the crude and the guttural, we find ourselves more alone, maybe with only our families. And so the secret to enjoying that is to make good company of yourself and of each other. And the secret to making yourself good company is to talk on things that are edifying, building up, and improving the mind. So for those who are looking for something more fulfilling at home, I'm telling you, it's more fulfilling at home. You can choose what you listen to. You can choose what work you will do and how much you will do and how good of a job you will do. You can choose the atmosphere that you have in your home. I'm going to just read a few scriptures here that I found that go with what I'm talking about, and I'll start over here. With Ephesians 5, verse 15. It says, look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of your time, because the days are evil. And I see that as walking as a figure of speech, whereas one time walking is I believe, a verb, and it indicates walking with your feet, with your legs as an action, but it also means the way you live, the path you take in life. And there again, path is often used as a figure of speech. It means two different things, like a literal path and then a spiritual path. And so it says, make the best use of your time. And so that's how you redeem the time, as you say, could this time be better used than to be wasted? And so the homemaker, she's trying to make the home a desirable place for everybody, not a place of misery. And I think it's really important to look back in the past to see the mistakes people have made about the home. When people make it so miserable, no one wants to stay there. That's not good. We want to live quietly. Here's another one. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 11. Aspire to live quietly and to mind your own business and to work with your own hands, as we instructed you, so that you may walk properly before outsiders and be dependent on no one. And that is one of the wonderful things about being a homemaker, is that you lose your dependence on, we always think someone's going to take care of us, but you lose your dependence on everything that's out there and start being able to do for yourself at home. And that's the wonderful thing about being a 100% homemaker, is that you can determine for yourself what you will do next, how you will make things better, how you'll be less wasteful, how you'll be more frugal, how you will be happier, how you will make it a better place, and also to express to your children and your family members how glad you are to have them, how glad you are that they are there. Especially when they're little, tell them that often, that you're so glad that God sent them there to live with you. I want to read a little bit from this Greater Health God's Way by Stormy O'Marchian, and it goes along with some of the scriptures that I have here, because she has an article in here on stress. I was talking to my oldest children. They're all now approaching 50, and I was talking to them. Can you remember back before you ever heard the word stress, or before you felt it? Can you remember back when there wasn't stress, when things seemed to be happy, a little more carefree, where you felt a sense that everything was going to be all right? I often listened to music. We had a stereo that had you could feel the vibration in it, and we loved Beethoven's. We put our vinyl records on there and listened back in the olden days. And I always started out the day with something like that, and my children remembered that music, and it often would comment, even when they were very young, like under 5, that Beethoven stirred their hearts up, and there was a reassuring sound because of that music. But I wanted them to talk about how they remembered life before it was stressful. And my son had a favorite verse, and it was, enjoy your youth before the hard times come. And I remembered him pondering on that when he was younger. And it said, when you will say, I have no more joy in my days, or something like that. And how important it is to have a happy, carefree child. If you didn't have a happy, carefree childhood, it isn't too late. We can restore all of that, and we can have a do-over and do some of the things that you like to do. I think they call it self-care now, but it's very similar. And it's just doing things that are stress-free, and yet they edify, they build you up, and they protect you, so that if you're taking care of yourself, if you have plenty of rest, if you have good nutrition, if you avoid stress, then you're going to have a buffer there for when you're hit with something. It won't knock you over. You'll just be, if you go for a walk and you're enjoying fresh air and you sing once in a while. I had a list one day of things I was going to do, and one of them was I was going to sing a song, I was going to go for a walk, and I was going to skip. And because I haven't skipped in a long time, I wanted to see if I could still do it. And I was going to write a little story, and I was going to go and find those little boats I had to float in a puddle. And I had all those things written down. Not that I think they're going to get me anywhere in life, but they are a buffer against stress to do things like that. And I was also going to paint a little picture in my journal of those little boats. And I had this, of course I didn't get it all done, but just if I could do what I wanted to do. And a lot of people will spend a huge amount of money, I've done that before too, on a vacation, thinking that that's what we need, it's vacation. Go on a vacation, spend a huge amount of money, but when you come back, the trouble is you bring your mind with you and you start worrying all over again. So what we need to do is learn how to avoid it, and I found some Bible scriptures you might like. And so she talks about stress, and she says here, everything we do produces stress. And one doctor I was listening to said that there's some stress that's actually very good for you. but it's when you don't have any break from it that it's bad for you. But when it becomes excessive and more than our bodies can take, then we have problems. Remember that the ultimate reaction to stress is death. We need to recognize stress in our lives before it gets serious and take specific steps to alleviate it. I want to tell you, this book was first published in 1973. This was the first time I had ever heard of stress. I guess it's short for distress, but she said it's very important to be aware of the signals of stress in ourselves and in those around us. Now, if you don't have a healthy body or a healthy lifestyle, and you don't have a happy childhood to fall back on and think about, or you don't have a song in your heart, or you don't know how to think on things that are good, lovely, and pure, there's a reason the Bible says, the reason God says to think on things which are pure, lovely, true, etc., is because it is a great defense for stress. It's like having a mental immune system, and I'm beginning to see how important it is to have those thoughts, to be able to use those thoughts to replace the stressful thoughts. And one of the reasons we don't want to get rid of the stressful thoughts is we think if we let go of something, of thinking about something which is a great calamity to us or our personal lives, is that we will not be alert to fix it, and we'll forget about it, and we'll be careless and not be ready to fix things. So let me finish reading what she said here. It's important to be aware of the signals of stress. Some signs of difficulty in coping with stress are tenseness, irritability, depression, the appearance of being in another world, constant fatigue, forgetfulness, low tolerance of frustration, lack of patience, lack of appetite, sleeplessness, frequent headaches, sudden crying over minor things, allergic reactions, constipation, muscular aches and pains, and skin ailments. So what I would suggest is that one of the things that we can do, we can't fix what other people do that put stress on us. We can't make them stop it. We can't make them change. Sometimes, they will. But what I suggest you do is get your body and mind healthy, because then it can withstand the onslaught of stress. The next time somebody lowers the boom on you and says something that just hits you blindsided, that you weren't aware of, or suddenly shocks you, you will have the mental and physical strength to slough it off. And what I mean is, you're going to have to start getting healthy. And the reason is because when that scripture that my son liked, it said, enjoy your youth while you can, before the hard times come. Get yourself healthy before the hard times come. And I was reading about reversing aging the other day. It's a lot of fun to think about that. And one man had said, you could start walking backwards. Remember when we were children and we used to run backwards? And he suggested you just get a hold of a bookshelf or stand over by your sink in the kitchen and just take 2 or 3 steps backwards. And then turn around and take 2 or 3 more the other way. And then he suggested you also start walking sideways, 2 or 3 steps sideways, and then 2 or 3 steps the other way. He said it was very good for the brain. But don't you remember when we were little, how we used to think that was so much fun to run backwards or to walk backwards? And he claimed it's very, very good for your body and your balance and your mind to do those things. And a lot of things that they suggest to alleviate stress are childhood things, and things that we used to do in our childhood. So this is just step one is called peaceful living. And so to alleviate stress, I found some scriptures I've been talking with friends about how you can walk away from stress, how you can get away from it. And the first one was, aspire to live quietly and to mind your own business and to work with your own hands as we instructed you, so that you may walk properly before outsiders and be dependent on no one. And you know how dependent you can get when you have stress in your life, because you're going to call this person and call that person, call all the preachers, call all the elders, call all the friends, and get them to pray and get them to help you to cope with this. And then you put a burden on a lot of other people who really don't know how to help you, probably have enough problems of their own. But there are some people that will take on the worries and stress of people not on their side of the street, so to speak. Somebody else that they're drawn like a magnet to people who have had tremendous tragedy or stress in their lives, or someone has betrayed them terribly, and so they take up the burden for them. And then one day these people's lives get straightened out, and then the person that was so empathetic and sympathetic has all the stress from worrying about them. And so I love this scripture. It says, live quietly and mind your own business and work with your own hands as we instructed you. So it's an instruction. And part of the reason for it is it keeps you on your own side of the street, out of other people's business, which of course may be tragic, maybe needs your prayers, maybe you're concerned about it. But just remember, you have your family. You need to preserve your adrenaline. You need to preserve your mind for your own people in your own house. And my mother was really smart when she had 7 children, and when we got older, and she says, you know what time to come in at night, and if you don't, you better be the one that's nervous and worried, because I'm going to bed. And sure enough, just saying that when we were very young, we'd start to look at the clock, and we would say, oh, we better get in the house, we better get back, it's nearly such and such o'clock. And of course, nothing would have happened to us had we not come in. Our mother was sound asleep, but she managed to tweak our conscience so deeply that we could not do wrong. And because we were trying to mind our own business and do what was right. So then the other one that I wanted to read to you was from Proverbs. The prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. Now this is talking about, and especially to we ladies at home, we tend to think we've got more time to care now about other people, and we take on other people. We take on more charity, or take on other people that are having problems. But we suffer from it if we give too much and do not withdraw ourselves from arguments, danger, stress, thinking about other people's stress. And in the most of the people that have problems, I will tell you this, just from experience, they have a husband, they have a father, they have brothers and sisters, they have sons and daughters, they have people all over the place that can pray for them and care for them, that they can turn to. And sometimes they don't want to, but just remember, if they have someone, if there is someone, next of kin, so to speak, then they're not going to be alone. It says, one who is cautious turns away from evil, but a fool is reckless and careless. So to keep that stress out of your life, sometimes you have to turn away from it. It doesn't mean that you don't care. It just means that you have to preserve your mental health and your physical health for what God has given you to take care of in your own home. And I'm sorry to say that homemakers are often the ones that the neighbors want to talk to. They're often the ones that other people want to put a burden on. They look and see your life looks like it is carefree, and they want to come and tell you all these things, which, it's nothing wrong with that, but don't take it so deeply that you start to bring on the stress. So now I'd like to read to you out of the Jane Austen diet book. And the reason I'm talking about stress today is I'm telling you, find your exercise plan. Just give a 5-minute sitting in a chair type of stretch. That's all you have to do. And I've even discovered some where all all this man was doing was massaging his hands, and that takes stress away too. But you have to do the things. I asked some of my descendants, what was it? How did we used to live where the stress didn't seem to bother us? Now we have raw stress we're being hit with, just without a barrier. What did we used to do? And we talked about it. We went for long, long walks. We read. We would bury ourselves in books and read, and they were books that didn't have too much description, but just enough to make your mind see the scene yourself. Well, now of course we have videos, so we really don't have that part of our imagination working, or our vision, so to speak. And we also made tea. We put on. We made up our own plays. We made speeches to each other, and we sewed and we knit and we crochet. We did lots of outdoor type of things, tried experimental gardening, trying growing things like, they were kind of exotic, things that normally you wouldn't have in a garden. And we also harkened back to my own ancestors, mothers, grandmothers and stuff. They used to wash their hair. If they needed to be refreshed, if they mentally needed a change, or they needed to adjust again, they might go outside and cry for a while. That was a great relief. And they used to wash their hair, but they'd wash it outside in the summer and pour a bucket of water over it to rinse off the soap. They had this bar of soap that was called, I guess, a shampoo bar. It didn't have all the stuff in it, that modern shampoo has in it. And then the sun would dry their hair. And you could see, of course, my mother had a beautiful strawberry blonde red hair. And I used to see as it dried, you could see this beautiful glisten in it. And it somehow changed them to have a new hairstyle. After you wash your hair, you'd style it. And other things we used to do is that I don't know if people do this anymore, but if my mother could see that we needed a change, we needed some cheering up, renewing of the mind, just renewing of the heart, she'd bake a cake. And I don't know if people do that anymore, because the world has made us so self-conscious about it. But you used to be able to bake cakes and eat them, and they didn't hurt you at all, especially if you had a big family, you didn't get so much. And we're just thinking about all the things that people used to do. And they used to have a pile of reading material, and that was waiting for them for when they sat down. They'd have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. And when the modern community came along, people didn't remember all those things that women did at home to keep the stress level down. And a lot of it was just preventative medicine, because the stress was still there. And you can read the whole Old Testament, New Testament. There's constant stress going on, but it just shows the results or the rewards, and shows the ending of it, And one time in ladies' class, we went through, let me just find Philippians 4, and I'll show you what it said. We decided to march backwards, like we read back the last, and it says, Philippians 4:8 is the one that says, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, etc. Think on these things. And then if we go further on to see what the ending of it is, my God will supply every need of yours according to his riches and glory. So we decided to walk backwards on a lot of these. And there was a real interesting one here, which I'll find for you just a minute. It was the one that was from, I believe it was first. Find it for you here. You can do something interesting while you're waiting. And it was the one that says from 2 Peter, Chapter 1, make every effort to add to your faith virtue, and to your virtue knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, etc. And then the ending verse was, we call this the reward verse, and it says, if you practice these things, you will never fall. And then as we read some of these lists of things, for instance, Galatians 5:22, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace. And then we read on and it would say, against such there is no law. Like nobody can stop you. And so a lot of these things God put there because they are a shield to all the stress that we feel. We have this raw stress coming into our homes and into our lives. But if you build yourself up, if you get edified by all these wonderful things like goodness and loveliness and truth and things like that, then when stress hits you, it's like it's not as penetrating. So now I'm going to read to you from the Jane Austen diet, because he had a chapter on stress too. And he had a chapter on laughter. That's another buffer against stress. And it's from his chapter called Health and Happiness, the Mind-Body Connection. I'm really looking forward to him doing a lifestyle book like this of wives and daughters, because I think he probably could pull. There's a lot of hints in these old books and stories of how they lived and how they coped with stress. Laugh as much as you choose, and this is on page 241 of the Mind-Body Connection from his book, The Jane Austen Diet. Laughter was always integral to Austen's life. The earliest stories to plop from her pen as a teenager were commodities with slapstick plot lines crafted to elicit a well-timed chuckle. Studying these early texts, Virginia Woolf once added the important rhetorical question, what is this note that never merges with the rest, which sounds distinctly and penetratingly all through? Easy. It is the sound of laughter. It echoes in Austen's personal letters to her sister, with witty jokes dolloped throughout, and rings loudly in Pride and Prejudice. Lizzie is always ready for a good laugh, making her the self-proclaimed happiest creature in the world. I think there was a quote by her that said, I have resigned myself to accept the fact that I'm much happier than I have a right to be. And I love these quotes and have adopted so many of them into my daily self-talk. Lizzie is always ready for a good laugh, making her the self-proclaimed happiest creature in the world, and certainly the happiest heroine. I dearly love a laugh, she said. Follies and nonsense, whims and inconsistencies do divert me, I own, and I laugh at them whenever I can. Laughter is both an emotional shield and sword to Lizzie, helping her to lighten awkward situations, painful rejections, like being called only tolerable by Darcy, and most importantly, stressful situations. It was necessary to laugh when she would rather have cried. Lizzie's laugh away the blues reflex is such a well-known family fact. When Jane Bennet spends a few sad months pining over Mr. Bingley, her Aunt Gardiner flatly admits that Lizzie would have dealt with this stressful situation much better. It had better have happened to you, Lizzie. You would have laughed yourself out of it sooner. And that is the way. Actually, the previous generation was somewhat like that, because I can remember the parents of the time would laugh at situations because they knew they were going to go home and continue life the way they had it. They weren't going to lose everything. Life wasn't going to be a total tragedy, because they'd have this home and this home life and their family. Everybody's still intact, but now, of course, we're threatened by greater forces to take away the very things that give us stability. So you all know about this Norman Cousins, and there was a movie made about him. in 1976, and he was diagnosed with a paralyzing disease of the joints and told he just couldn't recover from it. So what he did, it says here, he rejected all the medicine. He dosed up on television comedies and humorous reading material, soon making the joyous discovery that 10 minutes of genuine belly laughter had an anesthetic effect and would give me at least 2 hours of pain-free sleep. In weeks to come, Cousins experienced a rapid remission of all debilitating symptoms in his joints and was soon jogging on the beach. So, proven to lower blood pressure and reduce stress, even smiling is powerful. Since infancy, our brains have been hardwired to associate the act of smiling as an immediate pathway to pleasure. Now, I read more of that to you last time. I wanted to stop now and talk a little bit about Fascinating Womanhood, because Helen Andelin she had taken 6 little booklets that were just secular. I don't know if they were these ones that you could just buy while you were reading on a train. Sometimes the trains would have this rack of books and you could buy one, and by the time the journey was ended, you'd finish your little book. And they were The Secrets of Fascinating Women, and my friend Janine has got them on YouTube to listen to. Be sure and go. I left a link last time. Be sure and go and listen to those, the originals. And Helen just modernized some of the language a little bit and made them a little easier to understand. But she used characters in old novels like Toilers of the Sea by Victor Hugo and also some Dickens. And she used these female characters to show what their flaws were and to help women understand good character. And that's the one thing that I liked about her book, was that she did explain character. And so she describes this woman named Déruchette, heroine of the novel Toilers of the Sea by Victor Hugo. And this was how he described this woman. Her presence lights the home. Her approach is like a cheerful warmth. She passes by, and we are content. She stays a while, and we are happy. Is it not a thing of divine to have a smile which, none know how, has the power to lighten the weight of that enormous chain that all the living in common drag behind them? Déruchette possessed this smile. We may say that this smile was Déruchette herself. She had at times an air of bewitching languor. Now, when we were taking this course back in the 70s, we understood these terms, bewitching languor, whereas the modern today would take that and just throw away the whole idea of it by saying that those weren't good words, and they weren't Christian words. But she was copying out of those little booklets, The Secrets of Fascinating Women, and this was also in this book, Toilers of the Sea, and it was just describing her. And she goes on to explain what this languor was. It's like a relaxed, it's just a relaxed feeling, a relaxed attitude, without tension, without stress. He said sweetness and goodness ranged throughout her person. Her occupation was only to live her daily life. I believe I might have talked to you about that before. Live your daily life. Accomplishments were the knowledge of a few songs. Her intellectual gifts were summed up in simple innocence. She had the graceful repose of the West Indian woman, mingled at times with vivacity and playfulness of a child, yet with a dash of melancholy. Add to all this an open brow, a neck supple and graceful, chestnut hair, a fair skin, slightly freckled with exposure to the sun. And this was Déruchette. And then he said, there is in this world no function more important than that of being charming, to shed joy around, to cast light upon dark days, to be the golden thread of our destiny and the very spirit of grace and harmony. Is this not to render a service? If you could copy that down and put that on, it was by Victor Hugo, and if you could copy that down and put it somewhere where you could see it, make a bracelet out of it or something. It says, there is no more important thing to do than to shed joy around, to cast light upon dark days. And we all have to remember that when you're hit with something really hard, you need to learn to be, you know how children, after they've been disappointed, they'll cry for a while, they'll get up and they'll cheer up, and we need to learn to do that in spite of the depth of despair that we're hit with. Learn to shed, our duty is to shed joy around and to have light on dark days. Even Christ said, you're the light of the world. And if you hide a light under something, a bushel, he called it, you hide a light under a basket, can't see it. And so it's very important to keep that in mind and to brighten up afterwards, after a while, and enjoy life and be like you were when you were younger. If you want to be happy like the girl you once were, then these are so important. I tell you what, reading a book like this will give you your youth back. If you're interested in reversing age, this is really good. I really enjoyed that. There is nothing more important than that of shedding joy around and casting light upon dark days, to be the golden thread of our destiny and the very spirit of grace and harmony. Is this not to render a service? Well, we see that in the Sermon on the Mount. You just read that very carefully. If that's not shedding light around, I don't think anything is. So here's how she analyzes the character of Déruchette in this novel, Toilers of the Sea. Now, you might not be interested in this, but one reason that she used, several people wrote to me over the years and said, I don't think much of an author that uses characters in novels for her illustrations, but you could do it more safely than using people you knew. You know, it's a lot more complicated when you start talking about people in real life. You could use it more safely because they were fictional characters, but they did have elements of what everybody has today. So the good character and the bad character. So the way she analyzed her was this. And if you could possibly get yourself a copy of this, it's really important. And so her character. Sweetness and goodness range throughout her person. That's what the author said about, of course, he made up the person, but you know, it's all based on probably someone real. She was mindful of the needs of others, for she shed joy around and cast light on dark days. Domestic. She was capable in her domestic duties, for her occupation was only to live her daily life. That is so hard, isn't it? You get up and there's that same kitchen mess that you just cleaned up the day before, or that pile of laundry, or that everything needs to be swept again, or maybe there's clutter that has accumulated somewhere as usual. And it's very hard to keep on top of it. What I like to do is I've got a little kind of a stereo old-fashioned radio. You've seen it before in the background sometimes in the guest room where I broadcast, and I'll turn on our classical radio station and listen while I work, while I sort things, while I put them away. Try to get everything, try to keep on top of everything first thing in the morning. And that's the only way to keep your house in order is to just every day pick up everything, even though it's the same thing. But she only wanted to live her daily life, and he said her presence lights the home. She flitted about the house like a bird, stopping to comb her hair as a bird plumbs its wings. Well, don't you remember back in the old days, our mothers and grandmothers, they'd work for a while and get the dishes washed and everything, dry their hands, and then go and put some stray hair back and pin it back, or you know, wash their face or something like that, check themselves. Inner happiness. Déruchette possessed inner happiness, or she could not possibly have had such ability to radiate to others. And so gentleness. She makes all kinds of gentle noises, murmurings of unspeakable delight. And so here's how she describes her. She is fresh and joyous as the lark. She sheds joy around. She casts light upon dark days. Her presence lights the home. Her approach is like a cheerful warmth. She passes by and we are content. She stays a while and we are happy. She has a smile with the power to lighten the weight of that enormous chain which all the living in common drag behind them. And so doesn't that sound like a mother with a child, always trying to be cheerful around their child? So the next one that she talked about was someone named Amelia in a book called Vanity Fair by William Thackeray. And he described Amelia as kind, fresh, smiling, tender, and domestic, and having a tender heart and a generous heart. So I just would suggest you read some of this, but back in the olden days when this was taught, we understood a lot of the terminology, and we didn't get too picky about things because, poets are so silly, and they would say something, and we wouldn't analyze it to death. We'd try to get the general meaning of it, and the whole meaning of it is to cast light on dark, dark days, look on things with a positive view for the future. And I had a friend who, I'm going to talk a little bit longer today, but you can pause at any time you want. I had a friend who reached such a low point in her life, and she didn't know how she was going to recover or get up from where she was at, and reached a real low point. And she said to me, but I believe that things will get better. And I thought to myself, that woman is amazing, because she said, I believe things are going to get better. And she just said, I just have a feeling things are going to get better. And sure enough, she rose up from it, and she helped her family to recover from financial disaster and from all kinds of other problems, and today is thriving. And so I wanted to at least give you that encouragement. And also, I talked to you before about Home Comforts by Cheryl Mendelson. It's a great big book. It's really worthy of being a textbook in a homemaking school. Wouldn't that be nice? But I wanted to read you something in it, and it's from page 146 on food, and it's called General Guidelines for Safe and Effective Refrigerator Storage. Now, she was the woman who was the lawyer, and she said between the two careers, the homemaking was the hardest. And she wrote a chapter on everything. Let me just read what the chapters are as I flip through so you can know what they were. Start here. Neatening things, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, beverages, the center of a dwelling, kitchen culture, cold comfort, she's talking about refrigeration, safe food, how to keep food safe, the fabric in your home, cloth, transformations, the natural fibers, care labels, laundering, folding clothes and linen, how to launder tricky items, the air in your castle. I might want to read that one to you. Textile furnishings, and she talks about peaceful coexistence with microbes, ceramic tile, metals, light, pets, beds and bedding, fire, safety measures for children, and records. And she talked about the old-fashioned records they would have. The butler would have a record of everything they bought and where it was kept, and a record of expenditures. I don't think we do that anymore, do we? So let me just read to you what she says about the refrigerator storage. Do not overload your refrigerator. A crowded refrigerator cannot keep foods cool enough. Leave room for air to circulate, for that is what is doing the cooling. I somehow thought that the freezer, you could crowd that everything's going to be frozen, and the frozen food would help keep the rest of it frozen. Keep your refrigerator stocked in an orderly fashion. Not only is this attractive and soothing, it is more efficient and safer. Remember Emily Barnes? I used to read books by her, and she said after she cleaned her fridge, she put a tiny little jelly jar of fresh flowers in the fridge. So when you opened it, there would be a jar of flowers to look at. I hadn't thought about that. Rotate foods so that you use the old ones first. When you buy new things, place them behind the old ones. Become familiar with the refrigerator and freezer lives of the foods you ordinarily eat. Throw away items that have been stored for longer than their recommended storage periods. Signs of spoilage or age include decay, browning, softness, curdling, and off odors. If you suspect the food has begun to spoil, do not taste it to find out. Even a taste can sometimes be deadly. Decay and mold spread from food to food, so go through bags and pick out and discard pieces that are molding or going bad. It is true that one rotten apple or potato can spoil the whole bag. It's true. As to the supermarket food wrappings and packages, see the discussion below about worries over DEHA in plastic cling wrap. If the plastic wraps on your food are of a safe type, keep cheese in the supermarket wrap until you open it. Then rewrap it tightly in a plastic bag or waxed paper to prevent mold. Leave ricotta cheese, cottage cheese, and yogurt in the supermarket cartons or plastic tubs they come in, even after you open them. However, once you have removed some for serving, never return it to the tubs or containers. Like if there's leftover cheese, cottage cheese, you never put it back in. Leave all meat, poultry, and fish that you intend to use soon on a refrigerator shelf in the store wrapping. Wrapping and rewrapping just multiplies the opportunities for bacteria to get in and out of the packages. Put a plate beneath them to catch any drips, or put them in drip-proof plastic bags, or place them on the very bottom of the refrigerator if it's cold enough. You do not want bacteria-laden drips to contaminate other food. After pouring milk or cream from the carton into a bowl or pitcher, never pour it back. Put the pitcher in the refrigerator covered, or pour the contents into a clean plastic container. Always keep milk and dairy products in tightly closed, lidded, or covered containers. We have bought the glass containers with lids, just because we're not always comfortable with the plastic. And I have one more thing to read to you before you go to bed tonight. And that is from Once Upon a Time, The Way America Was by Eric Sloan. Now, this can be about any country, not just America, because worldwide everything was similar in progress. So, he talked about how something about a well here that I really agreed with, so I wanted to read that to you. And that is, it becomes easy to forget our everyday existence when so many things are done for us. You know, we don't think about what we're doing, and sometimes that is the problem with so much stress, is not really thinking about what we're doing. I wish I had my little phone here because I'd read what one of my family members wrote to me. She said, I decided to be more mindful and careful of every step I take, every movement I make, everything I set down somewhere, and not mindlessly do things while my mind is on something else, not mechanically do things, to be present, mentally present with everything that I do, so that I won't shuffle along feeling lost, something like that. And I think that's very, very important. It's one of the beauties of being a homemaker is we're not on someone else's schedule. We're not being pushed out like slaves to do a routine work that has no meaning for us. And so we must make the home a place of sanity. So here it is. And of course, the forces will be against you. The forces of evil will be against you, because anytime you find that you have peace, somebody wants to come and mess it up, or something wants to come and mess it up. So you really have to be on your guard, and that's why God said that the older women are to guard, teach the younger to guard and guide the home. It becomes easy to forget our everyday existence when so many things are done for us. Life becomes dull because we are robbed of the pleasure of doing things for ourselves. The government is doing more for us now than we realize, and he wrote this in 1949. Even more than self-reliant person might wish. You cannot help men permanently by doing for them what they could do for themselves. Less self-reliant now, we feel less important than we used to. Back in pioneer days, we were completely aware of our self-dependence because everything we ate and drank, everything we wore, almost everything we touched were results of our own labor. We had reason to believe we were pretty important in those days. One way that I like to remember is if I'm going to buy something and it costs $20, I'll ask myself how long somebody in the family had to labor for that $20 and think about it more carefully so that I understand that it does come from labor after all. What a bore life has become. When we turn on a water faucet, we have no idea where the water comes from. When we want light, we simply flick a switch without knowing where the power came from. Our clothes might come from Chicago or Hong Kong, but we couldn't care less. Our food comes from somewhere by truck or train. What's the difference? The actual difference is that if you had dug your own well, you would savor the water like fine wine. That is true. I have a well, and when the descendants come, they reach for a glass and turn the faucet on, and they'll drink that water, stand there and drink that water like it was fine wine. It makes wonderful tea also. If you have made your own candles for light, you'd enjoy the fruits of your labor, prizing those candles, actually enjoying the light they gave. And some of my descendants are turning off the lights, are not turning them on, and when it starts to get really dark, they'll turn on the little candle lights or LED lights, at least for a little while, just because they're quiet. And of course all the electric lights have a hum to them that you can't really hear, but I think it gets inside of your brain sometimes. But they were telling me how much more relaxed they feel. If your father raised the sheep and your mother spun the wool to make your socks and your suit, and I do remember my mother knitting socks for us. If your father raised the sheep and your mother spun the wool to make your socks and your suit, you'd be pretty proud of them and never think of discarding them, even when worn out. I remember I had a wool blanket that someone gave me, and two wool blankets, and I loved them, and I got them when I was first married. Someone gave them to me as a wedding gift, and just wore them out until there was just a piece left, and I hemmed the edges and made a baby blanket out of it. And then when that got too worn out, I saved a little piece on it, and someone wanted it for their little dog or something. It was only a little bit left anyway. But I remember just how valuable that was to me, that anything else, if I had to get rid of, we were moving and we had to get rid of stuff, I would have kept that more than anything. A house and furniture made from trees that you felled yourself would become museum pieces to you. Your whole life would be full of evidences of your own value. Therefore, your life would be richer and more meaningful. Such was the awareness and spiritual richness of early days that does not exist today. How now can we hope to regain this lost awareness? How can we rediscover the old truths? None of us can hope to grow our own trees, fell them to build our own houses or furniture, and few can hope to dig our own wells. Few of us city dwellers can even grow our own vegetables. But in spite of all the computers and modern science that make life easier, it need not dull our heritage of the American spirit, as long as we do not forget the vanished joys of pioneer life, the way that early Americans lived and thought. After all, we are not the same sort of human being with the capability of experiencing the old-time spirit. We just need reminding, and that is the object of this book, to revive the wonderful awareness of once upon a time. I think it's important, even if you can't do all those things, to at least know something about them. And so, ladies, I hope that this has been edifying to you and that you got a lot done while you were listening, and that you'll click on that bell, ring that bell, and click on the subscription. We're working on getting it to where it will come into your email when I post. It's just taking me like 10 times as long to do things as it used to. And so I hope that you got a lot out of it and that you'll leave me a comment. Your comments mean a lot to me. Thank you for all you do for me. Thank you for your prayers. And God bless you, and stay close to Christ. Goodbye.